When I was younger, I was in the garage with a girl from down the road. My dad said to me, "It's all relative, John." I said, "Dad, this is awkward." And he said, "No, that's your sister." It's not a true story, but I think it makes a wider point, doesn't it? Anyway, so today I wanted to ask, is the HX Stomp underpowered? So what we have with the HX Stomp, it's half the power of a Helix. Now there are many more powerful devices out there from the full Helix, obviously the Fractal FM3, the Boss GT1000 core. All of these I'd say are relatively more powerful, but there are things that we can do with the HX Stomp which are not as obvious as what meets the eye, and it is different from some of those other devices in a way as well. So the Fractal FM3, you cannot do dual amping on it, and this is a thing, the Fractal Axe 8 was the same thing. Although you've got quite a powerful chip in there, they limit it so that you cannot do any dual amping. So you have to have a certain amount of DSP, reserved for the effects and stuff. What I like about the HX Stomp is it's not limited in that way. So if you want to chuck all your DSP into the amp bin, you can do that. And I wanted to just get into it and show you some other things, which for me, I don't generally view the HX Stomp as underpowered. If I'm choosing to do dual amping, I would necessarily assume that I'm not going to be able to do loads of crazy effects. It's kind of an interesting little limitation that I kind of like, although I can see that if you're a total effect bod, or if you're even expecting to do dual amping and aside from dual amping what looks like a fairly normal preset, I think there's a Ben Vesco DSP allocation thing which is really helpful for this, for understanding which effects are expensive and which amp models are cheap, so that you can put together a slightly more complicated preset if you are trying to do dual amping and more. But here I wanted to just get into some of what you can do with the HX Stomp and why I think, although there are limitations, I think they're easily workable, and this for me is my favorite little device. And I think that one of the most versatile things you could buy at any price range, let alone for less than £500. So the HX Stomp for me is, I think, my favorite piece of gear. So here I've got the preset that you heard me playing with in the introduction, and here's what I've got going on with this. So there's a Stupid OD on this switch, and then a plate reverb. The legacy reverbs are always in stereo. This goes into a split, and a split Y, so the balance of the left goes all the way to the left, balance of the right goes all the way to the right. And here I've got a matchless channel 1, so DC30 channel 1, and then I've got a deluxe reverb, the vibrato channel, and at this join here we go left, A, and B goes fully right. And then I've got here a dual cab. So whilst this looks like, okay, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks here, right? Actually, we've got 2 amps here, which are some of the most DSP intensive things you could use. And this is a dual cab block. So then, you get to this situation where you go, right, I've got 5 blocks and I've run out of DSP. So in some ways you might think, right, well, that's a little bit underpowered, yeah? But at the same time, as I say, it's 2 amps, a reverb, a stereo reverb, an OD pedal, and dual cabs, which you wouldn't be able to do on a Fractal FM3. For one, you couldn't have 2 amps, you can do dual cabs. So, if I took away one of the amps, made it more FM3-ish, then suddenly we'd have quite a lot more stuff available, to the point where you could use Cosmos Echo. You could probably even do like a couple of dual delays or transistor tape. You could probably even get some things up in front of the amp, like a mono trem. And then you end up with a sound, like So if you're thinking, right, you want to end up in a situation where you've got a tremolo available, you've got 2 delays and, you know, lots of space for effects, then I would say to you, then you probably don't want to be in the situation, I think, where you've set up dual amp situation. I would say to you, consider just using single amps with the HX Stomp in that case, and maybe a dual cab. I find that the dual cab is a nice compromise where it, to me, has a bit more of a complex sound than just a single cab, and fills some of those gaps in a slightly different way than just having one microphone does. So if you want to end up in a situation where you've got, yes, chorus, yes, you've got trem, yes, you've got drives in front, yes, you've got reverb and a couple of delays, then I'd say to you, if you want to load all the basses in that way, consider whether or not dual amping is the way to go. The thing that I like about this though is that if you want to kind of do this paired back approach and have a relatively simple chain, like I showed you, Stup OD plate into 2 amps and 2 cabs, then and I've got Footswitch behavior here, which chucks me up to some different gain amounts. And you know, if I press it again, I get all the way up to. And I think, honestly, if I was thinking that I'm going to be doing a load of this dual amping stuff, I'd be considering whether, with the HX Stomp, I might want to put a real drive pedal in front. Yes, I think the inbuilt drives sound really decent into the unit itself. But you have to think, like, if I am using this block, then I lose out on other things. Or I'd be thinking, right, well, I like the inbuilt reverbs, but realistically, if I've got a pedal that could do delay and reverb, then I could really just kind of use the HX Stomp for the dual amps or for whatever it is that you're choosing to use them for. Then the other nice thing compared to some other units, so you notice like there's a bit of some kind of noise going on there, right? Because I'm sat quite near to the monitor. On the front end here, you've got a gate on the input block. Now this is actually really useful. You know, when you think we've got a limitation of 8 blocks and you've got a built-in gate. Now this I use all the time for really driven. And you can also turn this on per snapshot. So, you know, you could say, right, if I hold this in, the controller is going to be the snapshot, and therefore you could even change the threshold and the decay per snapshot. So I don't want it on for snapshot 1. For snapshot 2, I will not have it on either. Then for snapshot 3, it will be on, right? So then if I turn this off, I'm going between. And then, you know, if you decide, right, I'm in a really noisy venue here, so even on my clean tones I want to have this, then you could set up this threshold. Let me just show you this. Hold it in and turn. Find where the noise is for clean tones. Because I think you find that generally a gate can sort of interfere with your kind of feel a bit if you're too over keen with it. So something like that. So you're getting quite a lot out of, you know, things that are built in, and equally, you know, you don't have to necessarily have an EQ after the cab or before the cab, because you've got that inbuilt high cut, which is really powerful, and a low cut. So I tend to not have to use much EQ aside from that. I think that's really useful to know, is that you can actually EQ these cabs within the cab block. That's not a thing that you can do on the Quad Cortex. I don't think you can do it on a Boss GT either. But anyway, so that's kind of worth knowing. So those were some thoughts about if you are going to be dual amping, you're going to need to make some compromises, I would suggest. Another thing I thought about was what I really like compared to some other devices is that we could just go in and you can say, right, I want to put 3 space echoes in a row, and up to your DSP limit you can do this if you want to, right? And then you get what I'm going to do. This is a thing as well that I would say to you to do with any of these delays. Turn up the headroom on them, because then you get rid of that kind of digital-ish, semi-digital clipping sound. You know, we can go pretty ballistic if we want to. So now we've met new limitations of our delays, but you could see, you know, that's 3 space echoes, an auto volume echo, and a compressor in a preset. That's pretty cool. We could get rid of one of these, stick in a shimmer. Let's see if we can get a shimmer in. Yes, right, now pitch B7 and octave up, and we want sheen, bit Charlie, and damping I'm going to turn way up, diffusion way up, and we get this kind of thing. That for me is why I don't consider the HX Stomp to be underpowered in the way that some people might, because you can do so much with it, and there are things that are possible in an HX Stomp that you can't even do on something like a Fractal FM3, right? On a Fractal FM3 you can't do dual amping. On a Fractal FM3 you can't make a preset with 6 delays or something in it. You know, whether or not you'd want to is another question, but to have the ability to create what I think are some pretty interesting presets. To me also, some of these reverbs and delays are now sounding I think as good as anything else out there. Don't also forget a Kemper cannot do dual amping. This is quite a special little unit, I think, for the money. Let me know in your comments whether you had one and hated it, loved it. As I say, I use mine pretty much every day and I find them super inspiring, and that's why I continue to make videos with them, because they're great. Maybe I'll save that little thing. What is this? This is and you know, to be able to switch between that kind of preset to anything else with just one pedal on your board, a thing that could go direct to board if you wanted it to, a thing that you could record with if you take it away, is, for me, I think the best money you can spend in the gear world, and that's why I'm happy to do videos about them all the time, because not only that, they don't cost tons of money, relatively. Talking of relatives. Right, I'll catch you in another video soon. Hopefully that was vaguely interesting. Let me know your thoughts. Would you like to see a step up from the HX Stomp? I can totally see why people like the idea of the Quad Cortex, where it's something relatively small but really, really powerful. I like the idea of that, and I like the idea of maybe getting, for me the Helix is powerful enough. If we could get something more this size but with all that power, maybe a slightly bigger screen, I mean, I'd be all over that, like a Rash on a Rash. But even still, the HX Stomp, I think, for the money, is such an inspiring unit for me. Let me know in the comments if you want that deluxe preset and this JC pad one, because I think maybe one or two of you might enjoy that. I'm going to go and record an intro now. Cheers!